Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm going to be reacting to Neuroscience David Eagleman with Sadhguru, a conversation with a mystic. So a lot of people's been requesting this, and amazingly, I'm wondering why. So this is an hour or 2 hours long basically. I'm going to have to split this up because I have a way of making things last 3 times longer than they really should. But there, I mean, again, with Sadhguru, there's just a lot of things to say. I mean, it's not just take it all in. I want to make sure my opinion matches with this. So anyways, a lot of people request this. Um, I'm probably going to split up into 4 parts, hopefully, and try not to talk necessarily too much, because again, this is very long. So let's go ahead and get started. I've not seen this before, and I already have everything set, so let's go.
To continuously sustain that wonder, that sense of wanting to know, is the basis of science and mysticism.
We have no way that a human could perceive a system of that complexity, and yet each of us has it. We can make new strains of mathematics, we can make computer simulations, but we'll never get it. I'll never get the brain.
But even this brain can be manufactured with something as simple as a piece of a carrot or a bread. So I'm saying there is an intelligence here which can create a brain.
This is a place where I feel like science and mysticism have a real meeting ground, is that this 3 words of I don't know.
Do not ever be afraid to say I do not know. I do not know. So long as when you say that and you seek the answer, you try to answer it. I mean, you don't have to, I don't know, go crazy over it, but you know, I don't know is a very fair answer. A lot of people want to be I know it all. And my gosh, I need to stop pausing so much. But yeah, don't be afraid to say I don't know.
Maranam karunam milanam maduram smaranam karunam. Good evening, everyone. I said good evening.
Tell us about that chant.
The chant,
Oh, good evening.
certain types of invocation.
Yes, evening here too.
In the sense, the distinction between an invocation and a prayer is, prayer is an effort to talk to whatever other dimensions that people believe in. Invocation is a way of inciting a certain dimension of who you are for a particular type of activity. So this chant is mainly talking about how birth is sweet, but death is compassion.
Wow. Death, to say death is compassion, that is interesting. No one wants death until they want death. In the sense, when you're suffering, I guess one example would be there's a Dr. Death, I think his name is, where people out there are being kept alive but they want to die because they're suffering so much, and the families don't want the person to die, friends don't want the person to die. Doctors are not there they're there to keep you alive, but if a person wants to die, who does it? And to say, because and a lot of people have said that, I think it's Dr. Death was compassionate because they're suffering so much and they don't know why they're still alive when there's no hope of them recovering from whatever they have. And whenever he said death is compassion, it made me think about that.
Because if you cannot die, that's not a good thing, you know. We don't want to die right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Suppose you cannot die at all, what do you do with it?
Well, if I cannot die at all, I'd try to be rich. I would try to make the world a better place. Although there'll be a lot of suffering because the people that you know, that you love, you'll see them die. You may end up being a loner in a sense, because knowing that when you get close to someone, you're gonna see them die. Then you'll see your children die, and then you'll see your children's children die, at the point that you're just, again, potentially suffering. There's another quote that was said in another movie. It's like, the only reason we value things is because there's an end to it. I definitely didn't quote it properly. It's basically saying because there is a end to something, it has value. If there's no end to it, unlimited, either it lives forever, there's so much of it, it has very little value. The more limited it is in terms of how much there is of it or how little of a lifespan it has, the more value it has.
It'll become a serious problem. Though birth and life is very sweet, death is a great compassion if it comes at the right time. Meeting and mingling is very sweet, but memory is a great compassion. And if one transcends the process that we refer to as time, then the whole existence is compassion for you. That's what the chant is, I mean, generally saying.
So I'm very interested in the intersection of our worlds, science and mysticism.
I don't know who this guy is, and by the way.
Well, we'll see. So I go into the lab every day and I study how the brain, which is encased in silence and darkness, how it constructs our reality. And the reason we know that this has something to do with the brain is because if the brain is damaged, even in small ways, your reality changes. And if you take drugs or alcohol or other sorts of things, viruses in the system, your reality can change. So I'm interested in finding where our perspectives overlap in this, because one of your interests is also understanding reality, how we perceive it, how it's individualized to us. So can you tell us about that?
There is existence outside, and there is you or me as individual human beings. We have not seen the world. We know it only the way it's projected in the firmament of our minds. When we say mind, in English language, mind is just one word and supposed to encompass everything. But in the yogic terminology, we have 16 parts of the mind which function distinct functions. And there are a whole lot of practices and processes through which one takes charge of these 16 dimensions of mind. These 16, for simpler understanding, can be brought into four sections.
Maybe scientists are like you're saying, mind is all encompassing, whereas in his belief there's 16 different minds in 4 different sections or something like that. Maybe scientists does that too. I don't know.
The first dimension of the mind is we are referring to as buddhi, or what is generally considered intellect. It is the intellect. I think modern societies, particularly modern education, has become too overly focused on the intellect. Aristotle, you know.
Too overly focused on intellect? Yes and no, at least from my belief and what I'm seeing around the world. A lot of people are, well, I can't really formulate it right now.
I'm not talking with your boy.
But yes and no.
Because of, we got too engrossed in, we got too mesmerized by our own logic, and we have invested too much in human intellect, leaving out the other dimensions of intelligence that functions within us. When we say intellect, it is the logical realm of what's happening in our minds.
I think I try to think logically.
Or in other words, in your intellect, you can't make your intellect agree. 2 plus 2 is 6. It has to be 4, otherwise you'll think it's crazy. So, it's factual. It grasps the facts of life and assimilates and makes an analysis of that and lets us penetrate through the world. Or in other words, intellect is like a knife. The sharper, the better. Knife is an instrument which is used for cutting things open.
I will say this, I do believe the difference between intelligence and wisdom. two completely different things. So he's saying intellect and logic. Logic to me generally means wisdom and not intelligence. I don't know if it's going to separate intellect and intelligence as two separate things.
So this is one way of exploring the world, by dissection.
Huh?
This is how, at least in high school, you must have dissected something.
I did,
Maybe
actually.
an earthworm or a cockroach or a
Earthworm,
frog.
frog.
I don't know how far you went.
Shark.
This is one way of knowing things. You definitely grasp something, but you never grasp the intrinsic nature of life by dissection. So there are other dimensions of intelligence. And another aspect of the intellect is the second dimension of the mind, we call it as ahankara, which in English language would translate as the identity. What is the identity you have taken? Your intellect is always a slave of your identity.
Let me take that in for a second. Your intellect is always a slave to your identity. That's very interesting.
What you identified with, it is only around that it functions. Simple things. People are identified with things that they've not even seen, and huge emotions are there. Their life is guided by those things. For example, all of us belong to some nation today. There was a time 100 years ago, many people did not belong to any nation. But today everybody belongs to some nation and everybody belongs to some football club also. Because both have flags and emblems and works. So, nationality is a new idea. It's just about 150, 200 years that we have this strong sense of nationhood. We've shifted from our ethnic, racial and other kinds of identities to national identity.
Well, we still kind of have all those other ones. Well, again, I can only speak from what I see in America.
Just the moment you believe I belong to this nation, the emblem of that nation, the flag of that nation, the anthem of that nation, brings genuine emotion. Nobody's pretending it's real. It's real because people are willing to die for it. It has to be real. But it's just an identity. You could just switch it any time. You can move to another country and take that on and it becomes yours.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
the moment you identify yourself with something, your intellect is completely always protecting this identity and working around this identity. So the identity, if we want to continue that analogy, if intellect is the knife, identity is the hand that holds the knife.
Dang. Okay. So whenever saying intellect, I'm thinking of studying facts, science, nature, animals, which has nothing to do with identity. But I think he's talking identity or intellect as in, I guess, your intellect, what it serves, because so basically your I guess the football club he's talking about, your intellect is your knowledge based on in whatever teams that are playing, and you know, like, oh, this person's really good, this person's not bad. And playing against this team, they need to do runs or passes or just any sport in general that has these kind of things. So your intellect on that sport is very strong. You have a very strong intellect. You know the players, you know the plays, and you know which place works best against which person because you watch the game so much. You've studied individual players. And the second that you are no longer a fan of that team and you switch to a different team because you move to a different state or something like that, or move to a different country, you start cheering for, maybe you lose hope in your country, or you've been living in another country for so long that you decide to switch teams. And now your intellect serves that team, that country's team, that state's team. And I think that's what he's meaning by how your identity, how your intellect serves the identity, because your identity was this one state or one country, but now that you switched, it now serves this state and this country and whatever intellect that you have pertaining to whatever it is that you're doing. I think that's what he's saying. That's how I'm understanding it anyway.
How steady or unsteady this hand is will determine what this intellect will do or undo. The next dimension of the mind is called as manas. So this is not just in one place. This is the entire body. Manas is a huge silo of memory. So when I say huge silo of memory, whatever memory you may have in your brain, I know you're a brain fan. Whatever memory you may have in your brain, your body has 1 trillion times more memory than that. You definitely don't remember how your great-great-great-great-grandfather looked like.
Okay.
But his nose is sitting on your face
Yes,
right now.
that's okay. That's what I was thinking. It's gonna. You also, I was thinking maybe muscle memory, because some people can do certain things without thinking it because they've done it so much. But then I was also thinking, it's like, okay, maybe that's not it. Maybe it's thinking genetics, whereas your DNA structures how your body looks. Your ancestors from way back in the day has inputs as it gets passed down to make you a better body, kinda.
It remembers. How your forefathers looked 1,000,000 years ago, your body still remembers, has not forgotten.
Yep.
Definitely it is not
Some
the
of us still
capability
kind of have
of
like a
your
little
brain.
residual tail too.
So, in terms of memory, the manas is phenomenal and it's right across the body. Every cell in the body carries enormous memory. Memory to a point for the origin of life on this planet and beyond. All that memory is carried in this body. So this is manas. If there is no memory, intellect would be defunct. It's like a car without gas. Because there is memory, intellect is on. This memory flows through the hand of identity. And whatever is the identity, the memory takes on that color accordingly. And then it plays up in the intellect and intellect functions. The fourth dimension of the mind is called chitta. Chitta means it's pure intelligence, unsullied by memory. There is absolutely no memory, free of memory, it's just pure intelligence. When we say pure intelligence, all kinds of things have been said, with all due respect to everybody's beliefs and faiths and whatever. All kinds of things have been said to people that God is generous, God is love, God is this, God is that. Suppose nobody told you anything and you just paid attention to all the creation around you, how a flower blossoms, how a leaf is, how an ant moves. If you paid enough attention, one thing that you would definitely come to is, whatever is the source of creation is a goddamn intelligent thing.
The source of creation, my mind thinks of Darwinism. Again, that is that the fittest will survive, not the strongest, not the most intelligent, because you can be very intelligent, but in a situation where you need strength, you will fail. You can be the strongest, but if the situation requires intelligence, you will fail. So every environment that we live in requires a very particular set of skills, and if you don't have those skills, you're less likely to survive.
Intelligence. Everything is smacked with phenomenal intelligence beyond what our quite phenomenal brain cannot perceive. So, this is a dimension of intelligence within us, which is the basis of our creation in a way. If you eat a piece of bread, over the afternoon it becomes a human being because this intelligence exists within you and me.
It will also come out the other end.
So,
it
if
becomes
you touch
poop.
this intelligence, in a very mischievous way, the yogi or the yogic culture says, if you touch your chitta, if you touch this dimension of intelligence, then divine becomes your slave. You don't have to think what you want, you don't have to seek what you want. If you touch this intelligence, everything that you wish to know is yours. It's just you have to just direct your focus and it's all there, because there is a dimension of chitta. Every human being might have accidentally at some point touched this, which makes suddenly one spark of magic in somebody's life. This is because they've touched this dimension of intelligence unconsciously. Now, the question is only about how to get there consciously and to stay there. So, these aspects of the mind are not entirely located here, it is right across the system.
I kind of think this is the endeavor of science, is to take the intelligence all around us and across our system and try to understand the principles of that. It's a way of going out and trying to understand the blueprints around us in a way that can be made conscious. And we've made lots of progress that way, and we've walked on the moon, and we've cured lots of human suffering that way. by viewing this deep intelligence, which I totally agree with you about, as something that we can make understandable. Take it from the ineffable to the effable, and that's part of what's maybe the biggest part of what's made our world what it is today.
I will say, I mentioned this earlier, I don't know who that guy is. I should probably look him up. Neuroscientist. I don't know, like, amazingly, I've not ran into him on YouTube. Also, I'm sorry for grunting so much, just because I just agree, like, oh yeah, you know, I don't know why you make the grunting noise there.
Intervene. When you say understandable, that means we can put it into the parameters of logic. What if there is a dimension of intelligence within you which does not fit into the parameters of logic? Trying to fit everything into the parameters of logic means the surface intelligence, which is the intellect, which is our survival mode. If we don't have an intellect, we wouldn't survive in this world. What is a survival instrument? We are trying to put all dimensions of life through that, and it has to pass through that sieve. That will completely skew the process.
I would want to know that the things that are available to the intellect can't encompass the intelligence of a flower and of a birth and of a body and so on. I take the point that there may be limits to our intellect, but I don't know where those limits are. And I don't know how to guarantee that there are borders there beyond which there's something else.
See, science has done incredible things in the last 100 years, no question. Our life is the way it is today. The comfort and convenience that all of us are enjoying is essentially because of the outcome of the scientific endeavor on the planet. There's no question about that. But at the same time, the limitation of science is we are trying to touch a dimension which is beyond physical nature with a physical stick.
Something that you and I had talked about before is this issue of time perception. It's one of the things I study in my lab, and I was mentioning to you that I think it's one of the most stubborn psychological filters we have, by which I mean time seems to be a construction of the brain because we can easily manipulate it in the laboratory. So you think something lasted longer or shorter, or something happened in a different order. And there are many physicists like Einstein who were very clear on this point that time doesn't actually exist, but we're trapped inside of it.
This perception of time that I think he's talking about, we see it, but it doesn't exist. From my understanding, or at least my interpretation of this, is the fact that the reason why we see time is because we can see things change, and that change is time. It always happens when you see a baby born, enough time becomes a child, a teenager, an adult, young adult, middle-aged adult, old adult, and then dead. That is time. That is one measurement of time. And it's not a physical thing that we can see. It's just, I guess, he explained that where I was like, whenever Sadhguru was saying that there's this dimension that we cannot touch in the physical world, I was like, no, if we cannot touch it, or if we can't touch it or see it or examine it in some way, then I don't think it would exist. But then when he explained time, it's like, well, I guess wow, okay, that is maybe one dimension that where it exists, but it doesn't, which is mind blowing in my mind, because we have clocks to tell time. A measurement of time is the rotation of the Earth, 24 hours. The rotation around the Sun, 1 year, 365 and a quarter day. It's all different measurements of time. So many different measurements of time. Again, a baby, a child growing up, old, age, dying. The apple, from a seed, apple seed to a tree, to the apple, to it rotting to the ground, to grow back up to a tree. It's all different times, I guess. I'm just maybe throwing it out there, but that's how I'm interpreting all this.
And so this is an interesting example of using our intellect to sort of come up against a glass wall and say, there seem to be things past this wall, and it's impossible for me to know what it would be like to be free of time, for example.
See, time is a very relative experience. Every human being would know this in some context. On a particular day, if you are very, very joyful,
Oh, yeah.
24 hours passed off like
Yeah.
a moment. On another day, you're depressed, 24 hours seems like a eon.
Yeah.
They say how long a minute is depends on which side of the bathroom door you are.
Okay, I get it. I'm like, what? I get
Somebody
it.
says, just 1 minute, wait.
Oh,
So, the basis of time, as I perceive it, you must pardon me because I'm uneducated, okay?
there is where the difference between intelligence and wisdom. I do believe him to be a very wise person, and David is probably a very intellectual person. Two people, different understandings, both are needed.
The only thing I know, being uneducated is not an easy thing. Yes, sir, because from the first moment you're born, your parents, your teachers, every other adult around you, everybody is busy wanting to teach you something that has not worked in their life. Yes. Everybody's trying to instruct you on something, it doesn't matter what. The only thing that they know better than a just born infant is they know some survival tricks, the adults. They don't know anything else about life. They have not perceived any life any better than a child. They just know a few survival tricks. They know how to make money, they know how to build this, they know how to do that, but they do not know life in any sense. Because all these other things are just accessories of life, they're not life. Life is something that's throbbing within you. So when we come to time, in the yogic way of seeing things, we just see life as a dance of time and energy. It's a certain amount of time and a certain amount of energy. Actually, in the local languages, the expression for death is very beautiful. We say kalamaitanga, that means his time got over. In normal language, when we say somebody passed away, we don't say it as we are saying it in English, we say his time got over. Actually, that's all that happened, somebody's time got over. Now, to put this time and energy together in a proper, weave it together well, if your time gets over when your still energy is vibrant, we say this is an untimely death.
Yes, okay.
If your energy gets over when your still time is on, it's a vegetative life.
When your energy gets oh, wow, okay.
To the art of putting this time and energy together so that both of them play together, dance together well, is a successful life. So when we say time, there are many, many things we can do with energy, but as far as time is concerned, it's ticking off for all of us at the same pace, in that sense. I know there's research. It doesn't matter what we say, but our time is ticking off at the same time.
I'm wondering if he's gonna say, like, time is relative, because I hear that when we go venture out of Earth, they actually, is it age slower or faster? I can't remember. So I'm wondering if he's gonna go to that.
We may think many things, we came to this talk, we went to the cinema, we went to the university, we went here and there, but as far as physical body is concerned, it's going straight to the grave. Because it is keeping time.
Yes.
You may forget, you're happy, you forgot that you're 65 or 70, you felt like you were 18 because today you're joyful.
And also, how you maintain your body will also increase or reduce that time.
But your body is keeping time. Your brain can be easily fooled. But body is properly keeping time, never you can fool this body, all the time keeping time. Because time is a consequence, time is not a factor by itself. Time is a consequence of cyclical movements in the physical reality. We know time. If the earth spins once, we say it's a day. If the moon goes around us, we say it's a month. If the earth goes around the sun, we say it's a year.
Oh, is it a moon? A moon takes a month to go around the Earth? I didn't know that.
Our idea of time has come essentially because of the cyclical movements of everything that's physical around us. This is the nature of physicality. Physicality is essentially cyclical, whether it's atomic or cosmic, everything is cyclical. The moment you're identified with physical nature, time is a big factor. If you dissociate yourself with your physical nature, if you sit here and if you have a little space between you and your physical body, because what you call as my body is an accumulated process. It is something that you accumulated, it's just a piece of the planet. If a little space comes between you and your body, suddenly time is not a factor. To such an extent, we have any number of people, this may be very difficult for a Western audience to digest, but I have seen yogis who have not moved from the place they were sitting for over 6 months, 7 months, just in the same place. By any normal standards, your body should not survive that. But once they sit down, they won't move, just like that, not moving at all.
I know recently doctors have saying that you don't want to sit in one place for very long. A lot of people have sedentary work, like sitting in front of a computer, and you're supposed to get up every hour to move around. And sitting down for so long, you could end up developing blood clots. And also, I do remember back when World of Warcraft first came out, an Asian person actually died because he played for like 40, 30, I don't know how many hours straight, and a clot went to his heart. Also, I wonder if these people were like did their muscles shrink? Because the famous saying, "Use it or lose it." If you don't exercise, your muscles will get weaker.
Because once you distance yourself from your physiological process, time is not a factor. Right now you're sitting here, it's not your watch which is keeping the time, it's your body. If I make you sit here for 3 hours, your body says it's enough.
That's what I would do with this video if I keep talking. I will say this though. No, there's two different times. Your watch is keeping track of time. It's its own time relative to certain things, relative to the earth. Your body's keeping up with time, a different kind of time. The time that your body's keeping up with is your body time, basically, until you're done. So both are times, legitimate times, but they're relative to each other. One's keeping track of the day and night, the other one's keeping track with your life and death time.
But suppose you did not have a body. We are going to sit here for 3,000 years, what's the problem? So essentially, because of your rooting in your physical platform, which you call as the body, which you built over a period of time, from the accumulations that you gathered from this planet, that is the basis of experience of time. If you distance yourself from that, there is no consequence of time on you.
What is the you that can be separated from the physical?
Is it a fact that you gathered your body over a period of time?
It's a fact that this body gathered together over a period of time, and it may be that I emerge as a consequence of that, this feeling of I, as opposed to me doing the gathering.
Tell me, you've been having lunch and dinner, or…
Have I been having lunch and dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah, this dynamic accumulation has been eating plenty, yeah.
So what you refer to as my body right now is an accumulation of food. It's a heap of food.
Heap of food.
Not a pleasant way to describe you, but it is.
Bag of meat.
What you call as my mind, largely in people's experience, is an accumulation of impressions over a period of time.
Agreed.
So, if you have to gather this much of impressions and this much of body, something more fundamental must be there, isn't it?
Houston, Texas is an accumulation of roadways and buildings, but we wouldn't say that Houston was there and then gathered.
You are not a piece of geography. You are not a piece of geography, are you? You're
well, I may be exactly that, a physical being.
I think I kind of understand where David's going with this. How our body develops, it's all DNA, is it DNA or RNA? I can't remember which one, but our body has a plan on how our body is built. It builds it exactly as it is. Sometimes there's screw-ups in it, but generally speaking, everything is formed. Like if you cut open so many people's bodies, you'll have lungs, a heart, liver, the etc. etc. So there is a plan, a very specific structure how our body is built. Our brains, our neurons are built. Now that one, I watched another video, and I think our brains may be something that I'm not sure, but maybe something very unique. How a smell triggers memories is how a very particular a set of neurons fire, and I think how all our brains are very different, even though certain things are in particular areas. So we have a memory part of the brain, our emotional part, our different parts of the brains. Our memory part will always, I think, maybe always be different because the neurons will develop differently. Even though you can have the same memory, it's just how those neurons are formed could be very different. Same memory, different roadmap.
I'll tell you why, from my perspective, that seems like a possibility. It's because we're across the street from the world's largest medical center, and every day there are thousands of people there whose geography is changing because of Alzheimer's or stroke or tumor or traumatic brain injury, and who they are changes. It doesn't seem like there's something fundamental that outlasts damage to the tissue.
See, you're talking about thought and emotion. The biggest mistake we have made is we have given too much significance to human thought. Whatever you think is only happening from the limited data that you have gathered, yes or no?
Agreed.
Yes. So the data that you and me have gathered, however big we may think it is, in terms of the cosmos, it's minuscule, it's nothing. It's really not of any consequence. So from this minuscule of data that we have gathered, we are generating some thought which could be useful in making our lives, it could be useful in creating a few things, it could be useful fundamentally for our survival and to enhancement of our survival process, all this. But it doesn't give you access to life. Thought and emotion is psychological drama. You can conduct it any way you want.
Sorry, it's a thought and emotion psychological drama. I'm sorry, maybe drama to me is like just something unnecessary. Like you don't want drama in your life. But it's helpful to experience a few dramas to make sure you're alive and to better handle it.
You're talking about somebody had a tumor or Alzheimer's or an accident or something and the drama went wrong. The drama can go wrong even without any of those ailments. You ask people. People's drama goes wrong without any accident or injury or ailment, just like that, drama goes wrong on a daily basis for a lot of people.
We usually give that a name though, something like depression or a psychotic break.
That's a business.
Not one I'm making any money on.
Well, the reason why I think he says that is because when we see certain patterns and certain things, to better understand it, we have to put it in a box, I like to say. So basically, when you see someone with Alzheimer's, like say Alzheimer's symptoms, but before we even named it Alzheimer's, like, oh, this person's doing this, this one, this one, this one, this one. It's like, wow, that's very weird. There's something going on here. Let's call it Alzheimer's. Then all of a sudden we see that same pattern going on. Now we've defined it, so whenever we say Alzheimer's, we know these people have it. We know what it is. We know what's causing it. We just don't know what the cure is. So to put it in a box is to help us better understand it. And that's what he was saying also, that that's what science is going for, is trying to understand things. Put it in a box, I guess.
I'm saying there's only this much. Either your faculties are taking instructions from you, or they have become compulsive for some reason, all right? Either your body and mind, you can conduct it consciously, or it's become compulsive. That's all that's happening. Whether you call it physical ailment or mental ailment, all that's happened is just this, that your fundamental faculties of existence on this planet is your body and your mind. These two things, you have lost grip over them. So it can become this kind of ailment or that kind of ailment or whatever. but fundamentally you have lost charge. That's all that's happened. If your body and your brain took instructions from you, would you create depression? Would you create illness? Would you create anything? You would create highest level of pleasantness for you, isn't it?
We certainly would if there were a separate you that could gain that control.
See, we can…
There is and there isn't. Again, like I was saying earlier about how you treat your body, what you eat, you exercise. There is only so many things you can do to keep your body healthy. Then there's genetics, which there's almost nothing you can do as far as science goes to, like, if you're prone to diabetes or I don't know what's genetic. Like, there's a lot of genetic things out there that's will have a negative effect on your body. Even if you take care of yourself 100%, eating healthy all the time, exercising all the time, not staying in one place, you know, just really healthy stuff. But if your genes just doesn't permit it, you will get the disease, almost no matter what you do, until science finds a way of like removing cancer and all that. You're going to be a slave to your genes, I guess.
Come to this like this. There is something called… because I see that you keep referring my brain. If you say my brain, that means it's yours. What is yours can't be you, right?
It's a colloquialism that we use because I need to refer to this one in here. I need to specify which brain I'm talking about.
See, when I say my hand, I know even without my hand I can still exist. Similarly, if certain parts of the brain are gone, our ability to think and feel the way we were doing it earlier may be gone, but still that person is not gone.
But I've seen, again, YouTube is a wonderful place, I guess. There's a person, again, I watched this on YouTube where I think a particular part of his brain was missing. It's the part that hinders you from doing, well, it's the part of the brain that hinders you from doing stuff. And with that part gone, he was just doing a whole bunch of malicious things. And it's only because of that part of the brain is missing. He is still him minus the hindrance part.
That's the question. So if I lose a little part of my finger, I'm still me. But if I lose a chunk of brain tissue that same size, I can be someone completely different.
No, you're talking about personality. Personality is again an acquired thing.
Well, personality is part of who you are, how you act. If you, I guess, if you take out a large part of your brain dealing with the hindering part, I don't know what it's called. A lot of people say you're not you anymore because, I mean, your body, your physical body and your physical brain is still there, but your personality, who you are before that happened, is different now. Even though you're physically relatively the same besides the missing part of your brain.
Beyond personality, I can lose memory, I can lose consciousness, of course. I can lose the ability to perceive reality the way that we do now. I might become colorblind because of a lesion, because of damage to a particular part of my brain. I lose the ability to understand what objects are.
Okay, let's come to this. See, suppose somebody became colorblind because of an injury or whatever that happened to them, unfortunately. That person still knows, I have become colorblind, isn't it?
Unless they were born colorblind, and until someone else tells them, oh, no, those are two different colors, you'd be like, what? I thought these were the same colors. So until someone else tells you they're different colors, you do not know that you're colorblind. And actually, maybe if you become colorblind, unless you know prior to you becoming colorblind something is a particular color. For example, you grab a red marker and you know this marker is red because it just has red colors on it. And you own this marker and you put it down there, you become colorblind, you're like, this is not red anymore. But if you saw a marker on a table and you're colorblind, you'd be like, oh, this marker is, I don't know what colorblind people see, maybe gray, I guess. Oh, this is a gray marker, even though it's really red. Because you had no prior knowledge of that marker, you assume it's always been gray. I'm assuming gray is what they see, I don't know. And you would not assume that was red prior because you had no prior knowledge. So having prior knowledge of something and then going colorblind, you will be able to know that you're colorblind. But if you've always been or if you were alive, you looked at different colors, and then you became colorblind, and then you go to a completely new area, you would not know if you're colorblind or not, because the colors that you see may be what you assume those colors are.
He's still there.
It's true for the person who becomes colorblind, but it's not true for example, a person who is born colorblind. They don't even have a concept that they could be. They don't have a concept of color. So let's take a person who's born blind entirely. They don't even have a concept of vision. So who's the you for them? Do they?
Even a person who has visually impaired, who's never seen the world around, he still exists within himself. He's as much.
Basically, I think what he's going with this one is we all develop ourselves based on whatever inputs we can get, whether we know it or not.
Such a man or a woman as anybody else can be. It's just that if all of us were blind, we would be quite a fine society without eyes.
Quite right.
Yes, isn't it? Only because somebody has and I don't have. In comparison, I have a problem. Otherwise, if none of us had eyes,
there'd be no problem.
We wouldn't have found our way around. We would have.
Yeah, and I do believe humans are very resilient. We will find ways, generally speaking, but we will generally find ways, but until we don't, basically what I'm saying is until we find something that we cannot get over and it's killing us, and if we don't overcome that, we will be extinct.
Maybe not the same way, in a different way.
Oh, I totally agree, because in so many dimensions…
There are mammals who are flying by, sound.
Yeah. Well, there are so many dimensions that we are blind to now. So what we call visible light is just a 1/10 trillionth of the electromagnetic spectrum that's out there. We only detect a little bit. In some branches of physics, it seems there might be between 10 to 13 spatial dimensions, not just these three, and yet we're trapped in these.
No, we are moving away from consciousness to perception.
I think what Dave was trying to perceive is about the fact that they're comparing blind people and how the fact that our vision, our five senses are limited to things we can see or touch or feel, but there are more things that we could do, but because of these five things, our sense of sight can only see, like you were saying, 1/10 of a trillion or something like that.
But my point is, we're already blind to most of the world. So I agree with you that, okay, so let's move back to perception.
See, what an individual life is, you cannot disagree that your life, are you? You're a piece of life. I'm a piece of life. Everybody is. What kind of personalities we have acquired, what kind of likes and dislikes we have acquired, what kinds of gods and demons we have acquired, what kinds of other things we've acquired.
I think I know what it's going with.
Process that's happened to us, cultural and social process. If you were born in a different part of the world, it would be entirely different.
Is he trying to say that, so basically, again, the example, like for example me, I am who I am. Then when a particular part of my brain goes missing, and I lose that hindrance part, I forgot what I called it, and when the hindrance part of my brain, now I start acting rash or harsh and start getting physical with people. While the people who know me will say I'm a different person, I'm no longer the person I used to be, but the people who have never known me has always seen me that way and sees me as that's the kind of person he is. So the new people who have seen me has always seen me this way, whereas the people that used to know me sees me as a changed person, a different person, not the same person.
depending upon what we are exposed to. These are impressions that we have taken in, phenomenal amount of impressions. Leaving that aside, let's look at one fundamental. Whatever you gather, you can only claim it's mine. You cannot say it's me, isn't it? Whatever you gather.
Physically gather? Yes. Behaviorally, you gather it and it becomes you because you act that way, I think.
How do you mean? You mean your body? You say
Anything. I can say, this is my chair. If I sit here every day and then I say, this is me, then there's a problem.
I think there's a possibility that it's exactly what happens, that the stuff that this piece of life can end up controlling becomes me. The reason I think of this as my hand is because it's most of the time is under the control.
My hand is okay, no problem. My hand is okay, me is the problem.
What did you say, me?
My hand means it belongs to you, no problem with that. When it becomes me, then it leads to a completely distortion of perception.
I think I understand what David is trying to say here. It's because even though this is my hand, this is me. Because I control it, I tell it what to do. And whatever this hand does is my responsibility. You cannot use your hand to punch someone and say, oh, you know, it wasn't me that did it, it was my hand. You know, you can't blame your hand and not take responsibility for it because it is your hand. It is part of who you are. It is part of you.
Okay, I think so. You're talking about identity. What you identify yourself as.
See, the nature of the mind is such, it is looking for because human intellect and human intelligence has broken out of a certain bond which was there for every other creature, that they could function like an automated machine through certain instinctual process. What has happened with the human being with the process of evolution is, the human being has broken out of that instinctual process, and there is an intelligence which has to function consciously. But functioning consciously means every moment of life is an exploration, which is too scary for a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
So the best thing is identify with something which gives you some sense of what you are.
Comfort.
But this some sense of what you are, which you took on based on your social and cultural backgrounds, what you took on, makes sense for your survival process, but not for explorative process. It doesn't explore life. It keeps you sane. It's a good solace. It keeps you… it helps you to sleep well in the night. But it doesn't awaken a different dimension of knowing. It doesn't awaken the possibility of exploring dimensions which are not yet within you. So if this has to happen, the most important thing is to be able to sit here not identified with anything. When I said it's so hard to remain uneducated in this world, because everybody's busy wanting to teach you something.
Okay.
This is all I did in my life, to remain uneducated, not to be influenced by parents, by family, by religion that's happening around you, culture that's happening around you, education that people are forcing on you.
I will say, be educated, but don't follow just because someone told you something. Listen, learn, and educate yourself on what's being told with you. Don't just be a follower. Don't listen and do. Listen, research, and formulate your own opinions and actions.
Just to be the way creation intended you to be, simply. See, I may not fit into the university milieu, but I'm okay, you know. Just simply the way you were born. Not tangling up your intelligence to any particular thing, either your nationality or your religion or your race or your creed or your family or any kind of identity or your gender or whatever. Simply to be able to view your life just as a piece of life. If one does this, then you will see perception will explode. in ways that they have not imagined possible.
Now, as a physical body, you're unable to not be influenced by the clothing.
Okay, I think I'm going to pause right here. I've gone, holy smokes! Oh my gosh, only 34 minutes in and somehow I made it last an hour. Like I said, I double up the time. Alright, so I think he's going on to a different subject about, I mean, it's roughly the same, but talking about the physical body as opposed to the me mind. I don't know, the mind. Your mind. So I will say, wow, okay, I see why everyone likes this. This is really interesting because I like the questions he asks, I like the analogies he's saying, I like the answers Sadhguru is saying. Jeez, this is quite amazing. Hopefully I input some things that also make sense to y'all. Anyways, I gotta pause right here, guys. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.